Petworking is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I'm joined by a fellow podcast host today, Mark Bevington, the founder of Ninedot and the host of the Marketing Tales podcast. I had the pleasure and privilege of joining Mark on Marketing Tales a few weeks ago, so look for that episode to be published. But in the meantime, we had such a good conversation then, and I said we'd have to keep the conversation going on Petworking, and thrilled that we made that happen. So, Mark, welcome to Petworking. It's great to be chatting again.
Peter, what a pleasure. What an opportunity and treat to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and being part of the Petworking network. Cool.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's fun to get a fellow podcaster on the show, and I think we're going to have a great conversation today. So I know the last time we talked, Mark, we were coming off of Super Zoo, and it had been your first time going to Super Zoo. So we spent time talking about trends that we saw at the conference. We didn't really get into, because I was on your podcast, Ninedot, and what you guys do in the pet industry. But Ninedot does web and SEO, and digital marketing for pet food and pet care companies. Mark, tell us a little bit about how you guys got into the pet care space. Sounds like this has been a new venture for you guys for the last couple of years, but I know you were saying you love being in the industry.
We do. And, the industry is just a wonderful community. I mean, we really got serious this year going to these, the globals and the super zoos. And every time I'm at these events, first, I'm overwhelmed in a good way. There's a lot to see, a lot of interesting innovations going on, even seeing how pets are being humanized a bit more. It's really cool. It's just a cool industry, and it's growing rapidly. And I really enjoy the people, and every time if you go to more and more shows, you start to make friendships out of this, and it's really neat. And we've worked in a lot of different industries over the last 24 years since I founded the agency, fintech and, financial and other things and startups. And the pet industry is definitely one of the most genuine, I find, and enjoyable. So it's one of the reasons we decided to add this niche to our quiver here at Ninedot. And we got into it because Pet Food Experts, who is a client of ours for, almost not quite 3 years, they reached out to us for a website project. And the VP of marketing there, Nicole Dominguez, is wonderful. Her whole team is fantastic, just wonderful people. And they're in the distribution space. And they said, hey, you guys are experts at web and HubSpot. We do a lot of HubSpot work, as well as WordPress and other things. And they said, we need you to just make this vision happen. This is the final piece to our branded package. And we need it to technically be great. We need it to look good. And we also need it to be optimized for performance so we can grow. I said, cool, sounds great. So fast forward to now, I mean, they were, if I could replicate the relationship I had with Pet Food Experts to 50 other clients, I'd be thrilled. They're awesome to work with. They're easy, they're collaborative, they're creative, and it's just a good pull and tug to get great quality work together. And they obviously have grown significantly. They're one of the top 3 players, in the distribution space, which is cool, if not the top.
Yeah.
I think they're the best. So yeah, that's how we got started and how we're trying to stick with this little niche because we like it. They're good people here.
I won't try to upset Phillips or Animal Supply Company by just by agreeing or disagreeing with you, but Pet Food Experts is great. And again, this is an industry that there's so much room for collaboration and cooperation. Again, like you said, it's a very friendly, welcoming industry, and it's one of the reasons I love working in it so much. And I think I always say it goes back to the fact that everybody thinks they have the best dog or cat in the world, and everybody's right. And I think everybody who works in this industry can empathize and relate to the love that everybody else has for their pet. And, we're all working together, to make sure that our dogs and cats, and, I focus largely on dogs and cats, but I know there's people out there that have birds and reptiles
Hmm.
and whatever else,
Yeah.
and there is that love and that human animal bond there. And that extends to, innovations in food and treats and toys and uh, coats and, other hard goods.
Mm.
So no, I think I'm looking at the Pet Food Experts website right now, and this looks great. What would you say, Mark? Do you have other pet success stories that you can share with us? And what would you say is kind of your sweet spot? I know you talked about, HubSpot and CRM and SEO and all things digital. What does a typical engagement look like for you guys? Is there a typical engagement?
There is. I mean, it's interesting. We look at the digital space and the website being at the center. And your website, really, our job is to take underperforming websites and make them into your best sales tool. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's different tactics and strategies to accomplish that one goal. And most of our engagements start with asking the question, what are we trying to achieve by making our website better? Now, we did a survey in collaboration with Pet Food Experts last year, and 67% of the participants said, client retention and loyalty was a big problem. They're really spending a lot of time on that. So in our mind, one of the tactics and strategies there is having a sound CRM system that can have at least track the relationship, maybe not engage in the relationship. So there's one tactical element of making your website a better sales tool because you're communicating better. You're being aware of what's going on, which is really nice. Another part that came up in our survey, more than 60%, I forget the number exactly, was brand awareness. So in digital, how is your website acting as that awareness factor? What is your website doing? What type of content are you putting out through the website for people to find you, make you more aware of your products or the sustainability of your products or whatever the story and content messaging is? And that's really important. So a lot of people really focused on that. And that's another component tactically to use to make websites your better sales tool. And of course, the obvious one, right? How do you make conversions happen on a website? It's a complicated process at times, but with the growth of direct to consumer and trying to bypass the traditional retailer, it's been around for a little bit now in the pet space, but there's a broader focus on it, particularly in the smaller indies. They're trying to get out there, and maybe they don't always have the budget to invest in a big agency and in big engagements. But it's important to understand that when you get to a website, you want to make sure you look at it as a storefront and you're really optimizing it for every customer touch point. And there's ways to do that. So most of our engagements start with looking at the website as the whole and how do you figure out all the different tactics around. We call it the better thinking model. And in our better thinking strategy session, where there's 9 points because we're Ninedot, and we go through those 9 actual key points around a website to make it your best sales tool. And then we identify like, what is the most important now? What's going to drive sales immediately? We call it long-hanging fruit versus longer-term sales like SEO. SEO is a long-term game organically, not from a paid standpoint. It could be immediate. So identify those just to help the company or the pet company really decipher what's my ROI? When am I going to see it? And is this going to take me places to grow? And that's what it's all about. So through our better thinking model, we're able to decipher good, bad, and different and kind of table the opinions a bit in marketing. I think there was a lot of that subjectivity. There still is of like, you need to do this and it's going to help your business grow. Sometimes that's just all nonsense. It has to be practical. It has to be grounded and rooted in data that's going to drive actual sales for success.
All that. And in the pet industry, I mean, you mentioned D2C, and I think that's a fabulous topic for us to get into because it's certainly a hot button in the industry right now. How you have on one hand one of the largest distributors in the pet food space. It sounds like you may also be working with independent pet stores
Mhm.
and small indie brands that are looking to grow. Talk to us about some of your typical clients and or some of your I know you mentioned Pet Food Experts, but what are some other big success stories that you have within the pet food space?
Yeah, I think, even like I love pet cakes. Melinda, the CEO over there, a small business, but, she needed help with understanding how to connect with their consumers better, right? Direct to consumer. She's been on QVC with some success, which is a big win for a smaller retailer. But she technically, her website technically was broken. So we had to fix that. So in order for Google to find you and consumers to really validate you and be found on search, you have to have technically a sound foundation in your website. And sometimes those fixes are very simple and not getting into the granularity of it, but sometimes they're more complicated. And we were able to quickly, in 45 days, kind of fix the core for her website, not changing the branding or really making massive visual changes, but the core. That way, Google can find her from a performance standpoint, which is great. Another opportunity is, thinking how to use social. Our next obvious thought was, well, there's a lot of interaction on Instagram and Facebook. Those are the top two social channels within the pet industry, based on our survey as well as the people we work with. And how do you leverage cooking shows? She makes wonderful treats that are microwavable, that are like birthday cakes for your dogs. And it's really cute. So we helped her create these little cooking shows, live cooking shows, to start with engagement, to really see more website traffic, with ultimately will lead to more sales. So those little tactical elements, so thinking creatively, even though we're a web digital shop, we have to have a brand hat as well and a marketing hat that uses digital technology to drive more conversations and just more traffic in general, which is really exciting. But back to the original point about D2C growth, it's definitely a hot trend in the pet care industry, and it's kind of reshaping the industry a bit. And I like the shift because we've seen this across the board over the last number of years. It helps to control the customer experience better, and then your customer can have more of um, a more engaged experience if you're going direct, and it's just how you decide to do that. And I was talking on the podcast just the other day to George Barton from Tall Tales, and they have another brand as well. And the technology they're using on their website is fascinating. Like, they know more about their customers and their buying habits, and their CRM is succinct, and everything is just jiving. It's just really great to see a really solid company, generationally, family owned, 4 generations, figuring the tech out and using it to excel their brand. Just, it's really cool stuff. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely a good shift. You can't avoid it. It needs to happen.
absolutely. No, I think the D2C angle is really interesting, right? Because, you know, I would say, if you are a young emerging brand, like, you want to establish a D2C presence and generate that demand before you try to get in brick and mortar retail. You at least have to be playing, via Amazon, Chewy. Maybe you want to partner with them so you don't have to deal with the logistics and the distribution yourself. And I'd be
Hmm.
interested to understand if you've had experience with that, Mark, where people aren't, are want to engage in D2C commerce, but maybe don't have the bandwidth to pack and ship and do all of that themselves. The other thing I think you mentioned that is going to be a blow up trend is that this increasing level of individualization and personalization. I
Hmm.
think more and more we see pet parents looking for that tailored solution for their dog. And you mentioned it with the pet cakes example. We're cooking a cake for your dog. But it also sparked with me when you mentioned cooking shows, where I'm pretty excited because in the next few weeks we're gonna, and hopefully it'll get out before Thanksgiving. But we're gonna have Caroline Artis on the show, and she is a former award-winning chef with a cooking show for people. And she has transitioned in. She is now has founded Holistic Dog Chef. So she is going into homes in
That's
Los
cool.
Angeles and doing fresh made chef prepared meals for dogs, and she's doing that based on consultations with certified veterinary nutritionists. Um, she's going to have a cooking show part of
Oh,
it, but
nice.
when I was talking to her about it, it really hit to me because I think more and more we see these breed specific diets coming out. We've seen
Hmm.
Royal Canin launch Individualis in Europe, and it's had some success since they brought it over to the U.S. But that is, a requires a vet exam. The vet puts all your pet's information into this algorithm, and it spits back a individualized formula that Royal Canin custom makes. So I think there's 10,000 different possible different permutations.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. That's interesting.
but yeah, but more and more, I mean, we see this. I want, you know, things that are tailored to me, and where you're talking about having a really good website that allows you to get consumer data and track their behavior and see where they're shopping and what breeds of dogs they have. The more targeted and tailored you can make your offer, I think the more success you're going to have as a pet food brand, or a pet treat
Hmm.
brand. But if you
Hmm.
can make people feel that you're creating a product or you have a product that is specifically tailored to somebody's pet, um, I think that's one of the biggest wins anyone can have.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it's a natural evolution. I don't think it's as much as not competing, but it's just natural. You want to give the best product to the consumer. The consumer is always in control. They have been for generations now. It's just the next step, for the pet industry to really get there and personalize it. And that's more humanization, quite frankly. It's what needs to happen in my view. But again, I'm a digital guy. I'm all about direct. I like the direct D2C market, and it's always a good one. But anyway.
Do you have clients where you're kind of tailoring in? They have a presence on Amazon, they have a presence on Chewy. Um, they may or may not have their own self-fulfilled D2C. How do you marry that with a website that you're doing for a smaller brand?
Yeah, I mean, the strategies are very uniquely different. So, we do have clients that, one of their goals is trying to improve the D2C, and how do you do that? And when you look at the different retail strategies or platforms like even Amazon, Amazon always comes into the conversation like that can just be our D2C strategy. But the amount of margins that Amazon takes, and, it's easy once it's set up, but the margins are not real good. So we always come back to search. It always comes back to organic SEO. And that's where all the conversations happen and trying to grow a really good D2C strategy on your website. It always starts there because there's only so much mind share out there. So if you're using the retail strategy, yep, you got to knock on doors, you got to have the volume, you got to produce it, you got to warehouse it, all that stuff. But when you get to your own site, we found it very cost effective to invest in a really good organic content strategy. I just had this conversation recently with a prospect pet company. And we looked at how they represented or presented their products, the names of their products, the descriptions, and they were unique and clever to them. But in terms of the market, they meant nothing. They didn't mean anything to Google. The consumers really didn't understand what they're looking for to validate it, to find them, to make the purchase. So it's a really core thing to look at and then implement. And then slowly make adjustments to your call to action strategy, whether you're doing a bundle strategy or a free shipping strategy, whatever the strategy is tactically. But you implement small but sure changes to really see then that convert and magic happen. Um, and they were surprised at maybe, I think they were surprised at how uncomplicated it really was because it's not really that complicated to do really good organic SEO with a solid plan and structure and then make some of these basic changes, the naming of their products and how they're describing them. They just thought it'd be something that was unachievable. But in short order, you can achieve it. Within 90 days, you can start to see success, and it's a long-term game with SEO. But with 120 days, 6 months out, you can then start to see real money value from it. And then you start to carve out a little part of the market differently, right? It's just another strategy. And we've seen a lot of the smaller indie retailers that we've met at Global, PFX Expo, we met a few. They're all interested in doing this. Like, we're small, let's say they're doing less than 15, 20 million in gross sales or even smaller. And they're like, how do we do this? We're just trying to carve out revenue so we can grow. And there's some easy ways to do that. They don't have to be complicated. So I think it's a great venture to get into. And when you get to the bigger, when you get to the bigger brands that are, trying to do either sub brands or there's multi brands within their umbrella, that becomes a little bit more complex. That SEO tactic doesn't always work as well because SEO is so specific and how you get consumers to the site and convert. But another topic for another day.
I'd be curious. You also mentioned social media and Facebook and Instagram, and we've certainly seen that for driving awareness either of trends or of brands in the pet food space. Social is huge. I mean, there are so
Hmm.
many different affinity groups, people that have breed specific, affinity groups or support groups on Facebook. Um, it's a big channel that I don't know that everybody necessarily taps into. Uh,
Hmm.
and because, if you have those advocates for your brand, that, or, for a methodology, whether it's, feeding fresh or feeding raw or feeding freeze dried, you get champions and people espousing the positive results they've had with their pets. Like that's big. Where
Yeah.
do you kind of draw the line and where do you see the overlap and crossover between SEO and social, and how do you make those two dovetail and work together to drive awareness and create, growth for these emerging brands?
Yeah, as a non-social media agency, for all the social folks out there, they're going to be like, Mark, you're an idiot. But I'm going to tell you this. I think, in my point of view, social media is a conversation. And that's how you create community, through conversations and engaging each other through that. And I think social media generally, most brands miss that point because it's a community that you're nurturing. Those are your ambassadors. And those ambassadors truly are becoming your organic SEO through social versus technical SEO, which is content development and keywords and this and all this other technical jargon underlying the website. That's a whole different element. So there is some overlap, but I think most people miss the opportunity in social because they think they have to post every day, for 365 days a year with really great videos, but that's not the case. Because if you're truly engaging and having conversations about your product and the benefits and why it's providing value to your community, that's where those engagements and likes come and where you build those advocates. I mean, in our survey we created, we found that, I mean, I think social media advertising was overwhelmingly the hottest tactic people use, way more than SEO or influencer marketing even. I think it was like 84% of our participants in the survey, social media advertising specifically, not just posting, was the hottest way for ROI because they know they can spend a little bit of money on Facebook or Instagram. Those are two primary channels that they love. TikTok is still kind of newish. There's some companies that use it, like the Farmer's Dog. I see them everywhere. Like I can't pick up any social platform now and not see the Farmer's Dog. They're doing a great job. I'm hoping they're seeing ROI there. But it's like that's the only brand I see now. But it's fascinating to me. So, Mark Schaefer, who's on my podcast, he's an expert at communities and marketing, and he talked a lot about community. And we touched on this again in our episode. And yeah, I think people are missing the boat a little bit in social. Yeah, I just had, George Barton from Tall Tales. He just has me top of mind. Their social channels are awesome. Like they're killing it, right? They're having conversations. They're really doing a good job with interesting content. They're really getting into, the details of their product, sustainability being one, but diving into what sustainability means. They're getting into their give back program, which is popular. So companies now are again thinking about purpose. Purpose was a big deal a decade ago, but the pet industry is growing fast, and now purpose is a new thing to them, which is fine. That's cool. Purpose matters, and you have to stand for something or you fall for everything. So I think that's great. But when you share it openly and you invite, your audience to engage with you, magic happens in social. So I agree. Social media is hot. It always has been. But don't force it. Don't be forcing those daily posts and those, cool videos and the cool tracks and blah, blah, blah. But again, I'm an old guy, so I'm not a huge social guy. That's why I don't do it at my agency, but I have an opinion about it for sure.
And that's good to hear. And I think you're right. Uh, I can't go on YouTube or without seeing the farmer's dog, and I feel like with my you know streaming on Fubo or YouTube TV, they're always there as well,
Hmm.
um, and they're certainly generating awareness. I guess the ROI would be debatable. I think I've heard from some folks that they could become profitable overnight by just cutting the advertising spend, but
Yeah.
at a certain point, it's like, you're trying to scale, you're trying to get a big customer following, and
Hmm.
um, they're definitely making waves in the industry. They're the champions of that fresh frozen category. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I was
um,
surprised, we did
so
we touched on my podcast about influencer marketing, which is a fascinating kind of marketing tactic to me. And a lot of people don't use it in the pet industry based on our survey. Very few people engage in it. And the ones that didn't find great success in it at all times. And that's hard to do, to pair a really good influencer with a particular product. But I'm surprised that I don't see more influencer marketing, but I don't know. I think that's an untapped
Back to that
arena.
individualization, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that because people identify so strongly with their dog and their breed of dog, and so maybe if I'm trying to think. I can't think of many great examples of influencer marketing in pet. You see it occasionally, and you see these, you see dogs and their owners that go viral because their dog can ride a skateboard, or
Hmm.
because their dogs, it can do cool tricks, or is really well behaved. Yeah, I think you also, that we've seen Nulo lean into the celebrity angle with Simone Biles, and
Hmm.
kind of adopting that athlete mentality. But again, I think it's really hard to have that universal influencer, right? So it's like you have to pick the
Yeah.
niche of,
Yep.
are you talking to, you know, golden retriever parents, or are you talking to German Shepherd parents, or are you talking to shelter pet
Hmm. Hmm.
owners, and devoted rescue parents and adopters. And there may be some crossover between those groups, but I, I think where you might see it is when you have uh, vets or trainers, because that has more universality. And
Hmm.
if you can get that veterinary recommendation, particularly vets that have a strong following, that can work really well. Thinking about it from a D2C perspective, you know, it just kind of came into my head as we were talking earlier. But if we think about like where I've really seen D2C be successful in pet, is in the fresh frozen, and you have your farmers
Hmm.
dogs and things like that. But I think the more compelling success story for these smaller brands is in supplements. And you look at companies like um, Pet Honesty and Native
Hmm.
Pet, and who have grown up as digital native brands.
Hmm.
Maybe not even embracing true D2C. I think they've really just gone out and crafted a niche space for themselves on Amazon, Chewy. Certainly have some D2C, but I think people look at it, more often than not, the convenience factor of going to those other platforms.
Yeah.
But they build up a presence for themselves, and then they have been able to successfully migrate into brick and mortar. And now you see
Hmm.
them popping up in your Petcos and your PetSmarts. But it is all about creating that presence and following. Um, and and then being able to take that leap and realizing that moving into retail after you already have a presence isn't going to cannibalize your e-com sales. It's
Hmm.
more, I think everybody I've talked to from those companies have said no, it's additive, right? Because people are still buying it online, but now we're seeing people see us in the end cap, and we have enough of a presence that's resonating with them.
Hmm.
And they're making a purchase in the store, and then maybe going and buying more online. But
Well, I think that's an important distinction. When you're in store, you bring your animal with you, right? And there's a human approach to that. There's an experience there. So, when we go to D2C, you gotta, how do you transform that experience? How do you maintain that? And it's different. It's not the same going to a brick and mortar. Because that's what you've always done, right? So I liked what you said there, the additives, like the supplement market is a big one, but also with mobile technology and apps and technology, trying to figure out, no, how do you make pet care more personalized? That's still enhancing the engagement of the pet owner, but also it's a convenience for them. And that's a tricky one to cross. I don't have all the solutions there as a web guy, but I think we're going to see probably a bigger shift in that. And with the rise of technology, and how do we use AI to the benefit of the pets and pet owners? It'll be interesting to see how those innovations, mobile pet care apps, those personalized nutrition plans we talked about earlier, all that's going to come into play. But there's still that human aspect that I don't think you can ever take away from the brick and mortars. So I think they both have to live together somehow. Some companies are doing it successfully, but it should be interesting to watch the next couple of years anyway. I'm anxious to see how technology and AI kind of complement and supplement the brick and mortar strategy. Should be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see like who really gets AI in pet, right? And who's able
Hmm.
to kind of leverage that and say, okay, this is, here's all the data and we're going to take it. And, I think the big barrier to date is that there is this divide, right, between having the pet parents data and then having the pets data, right?
Mm,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I may be able to see what you're doing online, but if I
Hmm.
don't know what kind of dog you have or what you're
Right.
feeding them, or, it, it's this nuance in first party consumer data, right? I have to know about you as a person, but I also have to know about your pet. And in the same way, like, probably not going to know about your kids, right? So it's really hard to
Right.
market
Yeah.
to, parents of human children because there's privacy laws around it. Well, I mean,
Hmm.
with pets, they're not even going online, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
they're
Right.
completely subjected to the whims of the pet, the pet
Yep.
parent, and it is going to be those companies that are able to extract I know how many dogs are in your house or cats are in your house, and I know what breeds they are, and I know how old they are, and it's getting back to what I was saying earlier. It's all about that individualization and giving things to people on a platter to say like, look, we've thought about what you need and we here's the solution we've developed for you. um,
Hmm.
I think more and more that's what people are looking for because there's so many choices that in the absence of really strong brand loyalty, people want something that is hey, why wouldn't I try this? It seems to check all the boxes that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Amazing. You know, um, it's fun, learning this industry, and we're newer to the industry, admittedly, though not new to digital marketing. It's really fun to see the industry growing so rapidly and so quickly. It's exciting. And I think a lot of folks, even when I was at Super Zoo, the conversations, I had were we've gotten so far. Some companies were almost plateauing. Other larger companies, I'll name them nameless, we're taking really risks to dehumanize a bit some of their approaches, and it wasn't successful. So there was an opportunity I saw just in conversations from the indie market in particular to really take more market share, which was fascinating to me. It's kind of awesome to see. I'm a huge fan of the indie market. I think there's a lot of great young startups. The CBD space is just really interesting to me. Still learning about it, but there's a lot of pop-ups, a lot of people that are considering private equity money, some aren't, but they're growing without it. It's really interesting. So this whole thing as a business and business owners in this industry has been fun to watch, and I'm anxious to see what actually comes out at Global for new innovation. Like that's the innovation show I've gathered. Like that's the spot where people come out and say, "We got something new and exciting, and you should buy it," right? And I can't wait. I think it's in March to see what truly is new and innovative. Because I've seen a lot of like copycatting going on already. I don't know if you've been at more shows than I have, but I see a lot of copycatting, both in language, marketing, branding, terms that are being used, and it's all kind of the same stuff to me. And I was like, who's truly doing it well? Who's truly being innovative here? So I'm curious to
I
see how
think
that shakes out.
yeah, it's like it's every show. There's one or two things I think that you say
Right.
like, oh, that's I've never seen that before. And then by a year later, everybody has kind of caught on to that trend. And I think I was
Yeah.
saying, when I was on Marketing Tales, what I was surprised by is I really saw a lot of people leaning into the minimally processed, low heat
Mm. Yeah.
messaging at Global this past year, but then it didn't quite explode the way that I was expecting it to. I think it's still a trend, but I think people backed off a little bit and just focused more on limited ingredient. And I'm not sure if that's because people weren't totally comfortable villainizing kibble. because that is still what the majority of pet owners feed.
Right,
Um,
right.
and this this idea of minimally processed, low heat, cold
Hmm.
pressed, gently cooked, um, you know, slow cooked. All of these terms were very prevalent at global, and I did not see as much piggybacking on Zoo as I thought we would. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. I'll obviously be at Global, and you know, I, we're the wheels are turning right now. A lot of most brands right now are finishing up their brand planning for next year, and getting ready to get stuff out in the market. Stuff may launch ahead of Global, and then it'll just be prominently featured. Some stuff will be debuted and premiered at Global, and then launch in the months following. But exciting times, and then we also got Pet Connect coming up in December in LA.
Yep.
That'll feature a lot of new. There's great innovation there, not just from a nutrition standpoint, but really across the ecosystem. So excited to be going to that show, and hopefully maybe we'll see you there.
Yeah, it's awesome. So it's been a good year. It's been a great year, and I'm really looking forward to 2025. And of all the conversations I've had, on my podcast and at these shows, one thing that always comes up to me is like, "Hey, should we use an agency? Should we do it in-house?" And that's always fun to talk about. And I want to touch on this, and I think a lot of times folks are scared of using outside help to grow fast. The bigger companies just latch on to agencies. They have multiple agencies across the brand for doing different things, which is good. So for the little indies, I think it's important for them to realize that it's time. If you really want to do something great, you need to hire the experts to do it well. And I think that's important. And I share that between all the indies. And as you're growing as a company, I think it's good to have an external teams, not just one, to do really specified work to help you get there. Yeah, you can't be an expert in everything. And then for the bigger guys out there, stop just cranking out nonsense. Farmer's Dog does a good job. There's a couple brands that really do some really good work, that are really thoughtful in their digital approach and advertising. But I think it's going to be awesome to see. Again, I'm a huge indie fan. I don't know. They're just so like vibrant. They got that entrepreneurship spirit, and it's just like so contagious. I know, and I loved, and
You to root
I'm
for the
just a
underdog, right?
I love rooting for the underdog. So I can't wait for them to use some of these simple strategies. That's why I created Marketing Tales to kind of give them that advice and at least the platform to think about it without having to be ripped off by, agencies. So anyway, I just had to put
Yeah.
that plug in
And
there.
well, absolutely. And for indie brands, looking for support, they can go on Ninedot.com and check out the
That's it.
podcast, Marketing Tales, AILS, not
Yeah.
AEALES. There's the pet angle there. You hit it well. Um, so yeah, no, Mark, this has been great, and I'm excited to continue our conversations in the future and see what magic you're able to spin up for some of these indie companies that are looking for support with their web and their SEO and their digital. And yeah, looking forward to continuing to cross paths at conferences and sharing our love for the pet industry.
Love it. Peter, it's been a blast. Thanks so much for the engaging conversation. And I hope that your audience loves it as much as we enjoyed having it.
Yeah, sure they will. It's been a great conversation. Mark Bevington, founder of Ninedot and host of the Marketing Tales podcast, everyone. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at My Strategy and founder and host of the Petworking podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we will see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.
Cheers.